friends, thanks so much for tuning in with Embodied Astrology. My name is Renee. I'm a consulting astrologer and embodiment educator. And every month I offer astrologically guided readings that help connect you with your mind-body intelligence and energetic intuition. In this very special Aquarius season episode, we're going to tune in with 2025 and get some channeled messages specific to each of the 12 zodiac signs. So make sure to listen to the recording for your sun, rising, and moon signs. And if these readings speak to you, make sure to check out the extended readings for each sign in 2025. They include an additional 2+ hours of in-depth exploration for navigating this year's most important transits, retrogrades, and eclipses. Additionally, if you are an Aquarius sun, moon, or rising, or if you know how to work through the themes of each house in your chart and you know where Aquarius is for you, make sure to listen in on the Aquarius reading for an extra special edition with some important themes for Aquarius season. In 2025, that's January 19th through February 18th. If my readings resonate for you, let me know by clicking the thumbs up and tell me what lands in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe and stay updated with my monthly readings and astro-inspired movement and meditation practices. The best way to show your support and stay connected is to sign up for the Embodied Astrology newsletter, drop into a weekly or monthly Embodied Astrology class, or sign up for a monthly membership. You can find more information on everything in the show notes or at embodiedastrology.com. All right, let's get into your channeled readings for 2025. So as I was just mentioning, we begin the year of 2025 in a moment where the Leo body needs to relax in certain ways. And even as there is a constant continuation of forward motion because of time, there's also a need to kind of step back and out of and away from time. And the feeling that I have is that intuition is a really important factor right now. And in order to be able to attune with intuition, there has to be a willingness to get so present in the present moment that time actually ceases to exist and all times are possibly present. So we can access memory and feelings that are from the past when they will support us in order to be able to understand how things came to be. There is a real big momentum right now for Leos in moving forward in life, the need to understand strategy and pattern. And part of that is to understand what has happened in the past. But also there is a need to imagine and sense, and in some ways even divine, what the future can hold. And in order to open to the future, in many ways, we also need to let go of the past. And though the past sets the stage for the present, and from there the future emerges, 2025 is a year that for all the readings I have talked about as a bridge year. And this extends into 2026. But the feeling here is that we are leaving one world and we are crossing a bridge to another world. And another way to say that is that one dream is ending and another dream is beginning. And so a lot of the ways that we might expect things to play out could actually really surprise us and play out entirely differently. There are, of course, firmly established patterns coming from the past that have a lot of momentum, that are deeply entrenched in human consciousness and behavior and the actual material structures. And there are also things that are happening that in many ways have to do with what has happened in the momentum that has been gained, but also a turning point has been reached. And we can't, I don't think we can predict what is going to happen in the future based on what has happened in the past. And that there is a feeling right now of patterns are changing and patterns are shifting. And so for Leos, it is important as we move into 2025 to get really quiet internally and try to kind of feel into or allow ourselves in some ways to release the day-to-day focal points of a million tiny details and the ways that we might seek control over those details in order to set ourselves up for something, we need to release that so that we can tune into something that feels a lot more nebulous and potentially sublime, but also totally probably kind of messy, where it feels like let it go. Let go of the idea that you know how things are going or where they're going to go. There are certain specific situations in your life right now that are asking you to put down the control that you have over them. And the feeling here is, I don't know what's going to happen. It's not mine to do anymore. There might be feelings of being totally done. There might be feelings of inadequacy. You just don't have the capacity or the wherewithal for what it's going to take. And in that, there might be a sensation of loss, confusion, overwhelm, deep grief, and unknown. And there may also be a huge sense of relief and surrender, and even almost this sacredness of sacrifice where we let go. And in the letting go, there's a giving back. And the giving back is to others. Okay, you figure it out. Or it might be to spirit or to the unknown. Help me to work well in the ways that I can, and to let go of what I don't need to do, what isn't mine to do. There's a physical and energetic component to this as well as we enter into 2025. A lot of you might be feeling your actual well-being requires a kind of disengagement in certain ways. And this disengagement needs rest. And it needs spaciousness, and it needs you to return to your own sentiment and deep feeling. And inside of sentiment and deep feeling, there is intuition, there is guidance, there is support from your higher self, from your guides, guardians, angels, ancestors, however you want to think about that spiritual numinous realm, there is support there, but it needs you to rest in order to access it. And in the need to rest and disengage in some ways, there are real relational components. Now, relationships for Leos in 2025 and beyond into the near and the far future are taking a place of primary importance and, may I say, low-key obsession. We know that to get to where we want to go and how we want to grow, other people need to be part of it. We know that we don't have all the answers, and learning and engaging and collaborating and participating with others is going to be way more joyful and fulfilling and successful and effective and brilliant than just trying to go it alone. And in order to access the kind of relational growth that we want, there also needs to be some transformation in pretty significant ways that we have been going about relationships probably for most of our lives. And there may have been ideas or glimmerings or hopes or intuitions at various points in life that it could be this other way. But circumstances have been such that it probably couldn't have been as much as it will be able to. But in the moment of transition from 2024 into 2025, and then I'm going to say for the first 5 months of the year, there is a real deep renegotiating that is happening for Leo around how do you want to be in relationships? And what do you need in order to maintain commitment and follow through? And what do you have to give? And in the types and kinds of relationships that you want, how can you innovate? And there's a feeling here of whatever might have been traditional for you. And that means these are the ways that you have found yourself to be in relationships up until now in some kind of larger patterns. Whatever those traditions are, something is changing and you need to let them go. And there's a real feeling of needing to move into the future of relationship. What does that look like? Now, not for everybody, but for many people, the future is actually a return to something that I'm going to say has already been deeply known inside of human consciousness and is already deeply known in many communities and cultures, which is that we need a lot of relationships in order to thrive and definitely just to survive. And so the feeling of it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to be an adult, right? It takes a village to live. And the world as it is right now is a world that in many ways is in peril and a lot of precarity. And the distortion of our sense of community and relationality and reciprocity and the dignity that we can have with one another is so high. There's so much divisiveness, there's so much mistrust, and there has been so much separation. We are all living atop centuries, legacies of separation, of families and communities being ripped apart, separated from one another, separated from the lands that they came from historically, separated from culture, separated from language, separated from traditional beliefs, etc. Many of us find ourselves in places and spaces where community is not strong, or there may be really intense factioning inside of community, whatever that word community might mean for you. And so there is a sense of really needing to build cohesive and strong relational networks right now. And particularly for Leos navigating the area of primary relationships. And that can definitely include all kinds of relationships, but I certainly want to center right now the most important one-on-one relationships, which often take the form of partnership. And that includes romantic and spousal partnership as well as business partnerships. But there's a feeling for Leo, I think right now, of it needs to be more than two. It definitely needs to be more than one. We know that we can't get anywhere without other people, but it also needs to be more than two. And so notions of traditional heteronormative monogamy are being really challenged. And that's not to say that people can't be heterosexual or monogamous, but that your partner or your spouse can't be your only person in your support structure. That along with your partner or spouse, if that's the kind of relationship model that you want, you also need deep, intimate friendships. You also need other forms of, I'm going to say like romance and romantic energy can be friendly energy. It can be playful energy. It can be collaborative. It doesn't necessarily have to also be sexual. And so there's a kind of untethering or transforming of what does it mean to be in relationship, and how can we get real granular about what the expectations are inside of partnerships especially, but also you as a person being relational in general, so that we can really understand and unpack what these patterns are so that we can transform them. And the transformation needs to begin with that granularity and kind of sensing into what are these patterns, what are they about. That has already begun as we come into 2025. That's work that Leo has been doing for a while now. But 2025 is now going, okay, you see the patterns. So which parts of them do you need to cut? Which parts of them don't work? And there's a request here to find the no so that you can find the yes. Find the boundary so that you can trust the expansion, because you want to move towards this new idea. But in order to move towards the new idea, you have to understand what doesn't really work. And so as we move into the year and for the first 5 months of 2025, there is this feeling of Leo energy taking a little bit of a step back. And that step back for some of you, I think, as I've already mentioned, it could carry a lot of emotionality in it. But it could also have a deep sense of relief. And for some of you, it may just feel like you're a little bit far away in some ways, and kind of in it and also watching it as it happens. And that sense of watching it happen helps you do this work of letting go of what isn't working for you. And that then helps you to open to what will work for you. And this year is going to bring opportunities in major ways for both parts of that transformation. And the first couple months of the year until April, so first 4.5 months, to me feels like a big time for release. It's like, let go of what's not working. Now, as release happens, new ideas and momentums and energy does come in, but the emphasis is on do less. And then as the year moves on, and I'll say more in the second half of the year, there's a lot of new energy coming in. There are a lot of new opportunities opening up, new models for relationships emerging inside of pre-existing dynamics, and new people coming in going, hey, it could be like this. And then the end of the year asks you to return a little bit to that releasing and the letting go. Because you've learned something over the year in the domain specifically of your relationships. And by the time we get to the beginning of 2026, really, I'm struggling for the word because I don't want to repeat myself all the time, but it does feel like really major new feelings are coming in the realms of your partnerships. And on some level, all relationships can come back to the like dyadic partnering of I'm here, you're there. And so even if a relationship is not going to fall under the umbrella term of a partner, if we're thinking about people who might have there's a power differential, like parents and children or teachers and students or authority figures and a citizen or something like that, on some level, people are people. And there will always be moments when the roles and the boxes that we're in with each other dissolve and they become meaningless. And so even though there is such an emphasis for you right now on your partnerships and the agreements that you're making with your most important one-on-one folks, this is also, in general, a major shift in how you just want to be a person and how you want to be relating with people and how you are seeing relationships unfold in the world. And this is a contribution to and an impact with what I feel is happening on a collective level in 2025, and I think is going to continue to be a major theme for a while now, which is a kind of like disgust and rejection with celebrity culture and like the enamorment, is that even a word? The like, idea that there are saviors, right? Or, oh, because somebody has this status or these kinds of success or this kind of wealth, then that puts them on this level and that puts me on this level. And there is a way that those notions are becoming passé in the era that we're moving into. There's a real frustration and disgust in major ways in terms of collective sentiment with those kind of power differentials. We are in a time of a lot of class inequity and real frustration with leadership and power. And we're also in a time when power and models of power, particularly dominant powers, are becoming radicalized and enforced. And I think that's going to create a fair amount of tension in collective consciousness. So some Leos out there are really trying to be the best, be the baddest, be the boldest. And I'm going to talk about that through my frame of reference, which really has to do with you anchoring into your heart, into your spirit, your courage, your bravery, and your truth. But I'm also going to speak to it from my perspective, which is that you can't have your own brilliance if you're not already part of a constellation. And there is no such thing as the, individualist idea of someone getting success without a lot of helpers. And when we can organize our efforts towards the greatest good for all, then we actually get the greatest return. And this is a kind of toppling, right, of notions of hierarchy where when I serve myself, then I'm making myself happy and like, fuck all those people because they can figure it out for themselves. That's not getting us somewhere anymore, if it ever did. But it's definitely not the vibe for the future. And I think for Leos, there's a really strong feeling about this. Putting myself out there as like, yep, this is my opinion. I have a very strong feeling about this. We gain personal power the more collaborative and truly invested in friendship we become. And that means certain things when we're thinking about relationships where there's already the expectation of equality. And that might have a kind of sense of altruism if we're thinking about relationships where we may have the power, right? Where you might hold a social location or position that for whatever reason gives you a kind of power. And then for people who may be, in a position of lesser power with you, to have an attitude of friendliness and equality can have this feeling of altruism in it that is really important, that is about rising together and lifting each other up. But then when it comes to Leo in relationship to individuals where there's a perception that those other individuals have greater power, that is a huge moment of possible rebellion and a kind of betrayal of systems of power that really leave a lot of folks out in the cold. And so if you, in your own body, mind, and heart, and the position that you hold in your life, are able to really see that those in supposed power, those with a lot of wealth, those with a lot of status, those who are in positions of leadership are also people. And in their personness, they're not better or worse than anybody else. And the ways that they are working in their relationships are also through patterns with people. And that's the analysis that you can maintain and really kind of hold in your heart. That will then help you to not fall into traps of inferiority or submission. That will help you to also really maintain your own discernment and judgment in times when there are really strongly charismatic figures who are asking for a lot of investment. And some of those figures may be totally trustworthy and really inspiring for you and people who you want to put a lot of trust in. And some of them are not. And in order for you to really feel accurately who you want to align with, you also have to feel in your heart that they are no better than you. And you have to feel in your heart that you aren't better than others. And that's actually not the game you're playing. The game you're playing is about greatest good for all. How do we all arrive in experiences of life where we can feel totally empowered and able to be our true and authentic selves in ways that are also deeply accountable and caring for others and invested in others being empowered and able to be their full and authentic selves. So relationships are absolutely a point of focus for Leo, not just in 2025, not just in 2026, but for the near and the far foreseeable future. We're looking at decades right now. And you, because you are oriented so strongly towards relationships, you have a lot of leadership capacity. The more interested you become in other people and how other people experience the world and what their perspectives are and how you can connect, the more powerful you become, the more leadership capacity you have. And Leo loves to be in positions of leadership and power. And also, Leo loves to have a good time and experience joy and delight. And so part of what is happening in, again, the near and the far future is transformation of the Leo archetype. on a collective level. And the Leo archetype does have to do with boldness, bravery, courage to be oneself. So transformation of this archetype away from a distortion of individualism, which says that it's just me, myself, and nobody else matters, and I'm just going to get mine, towards what feels like an evolution or up-leveling of self-actualizing. And so to be an actualized self is to really take account for the fact that you are here in a body that is individualized. You are unique in a lot of ways. You have your own perspective, your own talents, your own struggles, your own experience, your own timeline. And you are totally embedded in relationship. And relationships affect you. And the circumstances of the world affect you and affect your potentiality for self-expression. And so to become actualized is to really wake up to the responsibility that we have in our lives, given the positions that we're in, given the situation of history and causality and the myths and imaginations that have shaped the cultures that we come up into and our social locations in those cultures, and the ways that we can access whatever wealth looks like or whatever power looks like, etc., inside of these conditions. So to become actualized is to really deeply land in interrelationship and interconnection with a lot of awareness of your impact and necessity inside of these relationships. But to not be in a place where there's a kind of like co-opting of your energy by all kinds of things, where then you're telling yourself that you don't have any choice and you need to do what others want you to do, or you're kind of in a mind state where you're working for things that actually are not really going to help you actualize. They're going to keep you performative. They're going to keep you in states of fear. They're going to keep you in isolation, etc. In order to do this work of what I'm going to say is building brilliant and effective relationships and networks and community and family, in 2025, Leo needs to work on themselves. There is a lot of need for introspection and reflection. And throughout the year, from beginning to end, there is a deeply reflective kind of quality coming through. And a lot of changes are happening internally for Leo throughout the year. And these changes are changes that affect the spirit and affect the energetic output. And they affect you in your body, in the ways that you want to be in your body. And this could definitely have an impact on your health and your well-being, as well as your style and appearance and general vibe and attitude. They will affect you in terms of your philosophies and your belief systems and your worldviews. And to a certain extent, I mean things like, do you get down with astrology, or do you have a religion? But more deeply than that, I'm actually talking about the narratives that you hold to be true for yourself. And so when I say your philosophies and your worldviews, though I might say like, I might have a philosophy of humanitarianism or something, I also have philosophies that are totally subtle and have been given to me through my relational dynamics and through my history and through my DNA. And these philosophies are in a lot of ways very childish, or I'll say childlike, and many of them are completely anchored in survival. And so as a personal example, I can offer to you that I have some philosophies around my own self-actualization and expression that are starting to emerge. And what I'm realizing as a person who expresses myself for a living, right, is that I have to listen more to my own heart and body than I need to listen to what's happening in, let's say, social media for what's relevant today for other people. Now, you might hear that and be like, yeah, that's obvious. And it might even be obvious to me and something that I've said a million times to other people and to myself. But the internal orientation around my personal philosophy is somatic, and I'm going to say also spiritual and part of my evolutionary consciousness. And it's a recognition that I've had a philosophy around what it meant to be liked or to be accepted or to have a place or to be able to sustain myself that had to do with external validation, in a way that now something is shifting and I'm recognizing my own guidance and my own need for that. So that's my narrative, right? That's my internal worldview. And that is being transformed. And that is totally changing how I'm giving readings. It's completely changing how I'm showing up as a partner and a friend and a family member. And it's really shifting how I'm orienting towards my own ambitions. So again, personal example there, offering it for you. Take what works, leave the rest. But think about philosophies, worldviews, ideologies, your beliefs, and take it into a subtle level. And so there are always going to be interesting discrepancies between what we think in our conscious minds and what we think that we subscribe to and how we actually do our own business. And this year is asking Leo to really check in. What's happening in your conscious mind? Do you agree with those stories? If you do agree with those stories, are you acting like it? Because we need you to be about it in an embodied way. And that means that your vibe and your affect and your energy and your behaviors and your decisions, not just what you talk about. So 2025 is a year where Leo is really examining guiding principles and what moves you forward and what you believe in, and then therefore who you are and who you are becoming and who you want to be. And this examination is first and foremost beginning with you, and it is being catalyzed by awareness that's growing in your energy. And that is like how you feel and what your capacity is and what you're compelled and guided towards, where your interests are, what you feel like excited about. But necessarily this reflection also needs to be deeply psychological and relational. And there is so much connection between what you believe in, what you believe to be true. And again, I'm talking about deep and subtle beliefs, as well as what might be conscious in the forefront of your mind. So much relationship with what you believe to be true and the ways that you have been affected by other people and what they believed to be true and what their actions and behaviors and decisions mirrored to you and what that did to you. And so here we get into the psychology of interconnections, and we get into trauma, and we get into intimacy and vulnerability and trust and ancestry and what has happened in the deep past. And 2025 is asking Leo to do some really important sifting and researching and exploring of what is deeply held in the body-mind, in the interrelationships that you have with those who you have been most affected by. And so here we are definitely talking about your ancestors. We're definitely talking about significant relationships that you have felt affected through power, through money, through sex and intimacy, through inheritances and debts and obligations and entanglements, etc. This work that you are doing is interesting in that there's a way that I think it's ultimately resulting in some discernment for Leo around what you have control over and how you have agency. And if we are in a mind state where there is more of this idea of individualism, and I can do whatever it is that I set my mind to, or something like that. That mind state will have a lot of control kind of wrapped up into it, and we're going to be focused and oftentimes very productive in that focus around what it is that we want to do. So there might be a lot of orientation around our own labor, money, the details of things, like how something is happening. And we can become obsessed with, like, I need it to be like this, I need it to be like that. There can be a lot of attachment and kind of grasping at, what do I have and what do I don't have? As you do what you're going to do in 2025, which is in some ways feel a little confused about who you are, but I think in a good way, and that this confusion then needs you to examine where you're coming from and how you got there. There's going to also be some slippage around your sense of what you can control and what you even want to control. And so the feeling for a lot of Leos, I think, is like, wow, that's a lot of work to try and control those things. Wow, I've been really focused on these details and micromanaging in these ways, and I don't actually have to. And when I don't, I get to free up a lot of energy. And the freeing up of energy might mean that some things are a little less to your liking, or that they feel more messy or unpredictable. And it might mean that you are more reliant on other people and what they do or don't do, and how they might or might not align with you and what it is that you want to do. But that sense of a little bit of slippage and chaos also has a benefit to it. And the benefit is that here there's a lot more glue for your relationships to bond with. And so as you become less micromanagey and control-y and focused on your preference and your productivity and how you're going to do things, and as you get a little bit messier and allow yourself to spill out in some new and interesting ways, that then can create friction in your relationships, where people who maybe have become very accustomed to you doing a lot of work for them now are like, whoa, I have to do that? And then you have to have a confrontation of some kind. And there needs to be an actual examination of what has been happening and what are the expectations and what are we actually agreeing to. And people who have been feeling really controlled by you and kind of, like you've been bossing them around because you're so detail oriented or whatever, they might feel like they have more room to express themselves. And that might mean that you suddenly are aware that there are all these different possibilities of how things could be done. And this could then lead to definitely different kinds of conflict, but also different kinds of creativity and different kinds of possibility. And the work of building relationships, and especially this C word community that I love to use, and a lot of people love to use, is definitely a buzzword. But it's like, for me in my life, maybe you feel like this too, the buzzword of community often glosses over the reality of it, which is that it's hard. It is hard to figure out how to get along with people. And we need to skill build. And the skill building involves all kinds of things. But certainly one thing that it involves is increased capacity to work well with ourselves, and the charge that comes up when we are confronted with difference and triggers and challenges that other people present us with. So regardless of what maybe other people need to do, or what we need to do in the big WE of it all, on a personal level, to be able to build community, we need individuals who are able to assess and discern and track what's happening for them. And how can they care for what's happening in ways that also care for others? And this is an enormous area of focus for Leo in 2025. Okay, that's what I have for you today. If you enjoyed this reading, it is an excerpt from your 2025 extended year ahead, which includes an additional 2+ hours of in-depth exploration for navigating this year's most important transits, retrogrades, and eclipses. You can purchase that reading and access it today through the link in the show notes below. For anyone who's interested in joining some of Embodied Astrology's live virtual events, we have some upcoming in Aquarius season that you definitely don't want to miss. On January 29th, which is the Aquarius new moon, join Ramon Parrish and me for a members-only event where we'll be looking at Pluto's recent entry into Aquarius and what this means for the next 20 years. On February 9th, the author, artist, and intuitive Janata Petrus is holding her monthly full moon artistic alchemy class. Take this opportunity to tune in with the influences and creative guidance of the Leo full moon. Finally, on February 15th, Sherry Taylor and Ari Felix will be leading a workshop on Saturn and Pisces and astrology for world building. You can also find me every Monday in Somatic Space, where we work with the astrology of the week ahead as guidance for gentle and healing movement and meditation practices. All of our events are available by recording if you can't attend live. We offer tiered pricing and scholarships to everything, including memberships, and no one is ever turned away for lack of funds. Find more information in the show notes or at embodiedastrology.com.